Welcome to My Financial Coach Live.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for My Financial Coach Live. Today, we have Jenn Evans with us, and she's here to address something that we find is one of the growing topics that we are getting a lot of requests for. And it actually has to do with the nature of the work that we do with our clients. Oftentimes, we are working with individuals who have worked really hard to achieve their career goals, and oftentimes they're working a lot of hours even after the fact of achieving their dream career, and so they're working super hard, and sometimes it doesn't feel like they're making a lot of financial or personal progress, and that could lead to a lot of stress. The official word, of course, is burnout. So as someone who is a specialist in this, we wanted to get Jenn Evans's view on this. But before we continue on with this topic, would it be all right if you were to give us a little bit of a background about yourself, Jenn?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Impo. And thank you for inviting me to join you today. My background is mainly in healthcare. I know that you have a lot of healthcare leaders and providers that work through my financial coach. But yeah, as far as my background, I started out as a physician assistant. So I did that prior to going to medical school. So did that for 5 years and was ready to launch more into medical school. Elected to do an OBGYN residency, which unfortunately happens to be one of the higher areas of burnout. Always had an interest in business. So during medical school, I got a Master of Public Health in system or really hospital system management. Knowing I was going to go into private practice, being able to understand management as well as doing OBGYN. Did a little bit of that, got into leadership within the hospital, initially as a medical director. I think you've mentioned you have some medical directors that you work with. So not only do they practice, they're also providing leadership. And I grew so much in the medical directorship role, they asked me to become a vice president. So practiced for a little bit as a physician and then was an executive leader, but it was between the both of them together, it was best that I pick one or the other. Ended up doing the executive work as a vice president of women's and then took on pediatrics. During that time, you're kind of like, okay, how did you get into this executive coaching, which I know I do. I was experiencing rapid growth within the organization. The organization was growing, especially in our pediatric department. We did a large acquisition or integration, if I, want to word it more like that. But I was like, can I get an executive coach? And they said yes. And as I was experiencing the benefits of an executive coach, I said, I think I'd like to do this. So did the training, and now that's what I do. I have my own company, and I also do some C-suite advising as well for an international firm. So it was a lot info, but just kind of that career. And as I'm sure you see people making transitions within healthcare.
When it comes down to the interactions that both of us have, I can tell you that when clients are coming to us and getting financial support,
Mhm.
ideally it's 80% financial, maybe 20% personal, because our background, our training is in, well, how is it that we can make you as financially efficient and healthy as possible. At the same time, of course, we understand we're working with a human. We're not working with little econo people that are trying to
Right.
maximize efficiency. So what we're trying to do is to also hear, hey, what are some of your concerns? So, when they come to us with signs of burnout, they may not be aware of it. So
Mhm.
could you maybe give us some signs that you've seen when there is, hey, I'm noticing this burnout as just part of that executive coaching that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as people come to me with burnout, I usually ask them about financial concerns because they can be interrelated. But burnout itself, what we usually describe it as mental and physical exhaustion. Sometimes it's one or the other. But really, as physicians, a lot of times you're putting in 60 to 80 hours. There are some that are fortunate that may only be working 40 hours or a little less, but for the most part, those long hours, the demands on being accurate 100% of the time, there's just no margin for error in healthcare. It can become exhausting. And if you're not getting enough sleep, in residency, I would work 36-hour shifts, and people are like, that's how many hours I work in an entire week. Fortunately, there's more safeguards put into place now, so most people aren't working that long of a shift, but it does become physically demanding. And, there's other things too, as far as the mental aspect. Once again, OBGYN, unfortunately, is one of those higher malpractice areas as well as others. And if you're constantly thinking, okay, there's a risk of malpractice with this, most people don't, but I find that people start having a little bit of stress and then it just gradually escalates. It's almost, I would say, kind of an insidious process that you're not quite aware of at the beginning until you just go, wow, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
It sounds as if, heightened stress levels, it sounds, thoughts of
Yeah.
quitting and things of that. But any others that you can think of?
Yeah, I think what I see with some people, and when I mention healthcare, it's across many different industries. It's just more prevalent in healthcare. People start becoming withdrawn socially. The events that they used to go to, they're like, I'm too busy, I'm too tired. There may be some interpersonal relationship problems, marital, kids, they may not be going to all of those little league games that they used to be going to. They're just like, I just can't do it. And so they withdraw from all of that.
Now that we've identified what people are coming to you for, and also potentially seeing when they get there, or you're seeing when they get there, when you start speaking with them and you start working with them, could you tell us, hey, what are some of the commonalities for this burnout that you're seeing? I think you touched on it a little earlier with maybe lack of sleep and hours, but any others that you could see?
Yeah, no. Like I did, I mentioned, the malpractice part of that. Other things that I'm seeing too is just, most physicians are really focused on health and wellness. I mean, that's partly how we get into this. And then they're no longer doing their morning exercise routine. They're cutting that short. They're either going into the office or they're like, I've got to try to get some extra sleep. So yeah, there's just a multitude of things, but a lot of physicians or nurse practitioners, because I work with nurse practitioners too, they'll come to me and they'll just say, as much as I hate to say this, I'm a mess. I don't know what to do. I've invested literally and figuratively monetary in this career, and I'm not sure that I want to continue it. And it's a really challenging, realization that they come to. And it's not, I think there's just so much stress that it's like, do you continue or do you not? And most are like, once we can work through that by managing work-life balance, getting down to understanding what some of those stressors are, then we can start, readdressing the medical aspect. One thing, if you don't mind, if I add in there too, is, especially with you on working on the financial side as a coach and me working more on the leadership and then burnout, if you will, aspect with so many physicians, when, and I'm sure you're seeing this in numbers that you should work with the physicians as well, as 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency. Residency isn't paid well. You finish all of that and you owe maybe $200,000 and you're wanting to start a family, and they're like, whoa, I've got to do this. And then you've got an organization that's saying, do more, produce more, demands on productivity, and all that.
Yeah, sounds as if there's a lot of commonalities that you're seeing. I mean, certainly we're seeing it as well. So there's obviously not a one size fit all solution for
No,
everyone.
no.
I can imagine. What are some of the things that you've seen really works to address some of these root causes instead of just, well, put a band-aid on it and walk it off?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love how you say that, because I think a lot of times as physicians, we'll try to put a Band-Aid on it and, put our happy face on and show up at the office or in the OR or whatever it is. But what I really like to do with clients, and this is one of the things I tell them initially, we didn't just land here today when I'm first meeting with them, you know, how we were as a child, how we went through college, things that happened along the way or through residency training is kind of who we are now. So I like to understand that. I like to understand if they have what else is going on in their world. Like I mentioned, finances, are there health issues, are there family issues that are playing a role in all of that? And then what is that future desired state? Because that's what we do as coaches. We want to try to get to that desired state for that individual. And so for each person, it really is just breaking all of those things down that are adding to that emotional and potentially physical exhaustion that's occurring within them.
So, for example, it's not just a matter of, go outside more, see more sunlight, put down the,
Right.
happy meals and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot of deep soul searching,
Hmm.
uh, and when it comes to that burnout that occurs, it sounds as if everyone's kind of different, and they may need a game plan. So, I just, if you could, to kind of close this out, give us a little bit about maybe some of the things that you've done that have
Yeah,
helped with that burnout. Maybe just one or two examples
sure.
that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So I like to better understand their schedule. So is there some schedule management things that we can do? Um, are they giving time for themselves? Maybe that's exercise in the morning, going to work, having something else at the end of the day, making sure that they get home to be with their family. One of my big goals was always having dinner with the family. But what I do is really, as an example, I need to understand their schedule. And that's where I've helped a lot of people. And then kind of be that accountability partner for making those changes. Sometimes I'll talk about meditation and people are like, "Oh, I don't do that." And then as you introduce them to some of the apps, that you can put on your phone that are out there, there's a whole host of them like Breathe or Calm or Headspace. I'm not, aligned with any of those, but, working through that, working through a physical, fitness type plan. But really, and then if it is financial, I like to get someone like you, Info, involved that can help them work through that. I tell them, I don't pretend to be your financial advisor, but I want to make sure that if that's a potential stressor, if you're on that treadmill of doing more, more, more so that you can afford certain things or you have financial stresses, let's get someone else involved. So really it's just understanding the root of what's going on and then working individually with those challenges. I think, really part of coaching too is really it's more the client, not me doing the talking. And we can hold all these things and thoughts up in our head, which we typically do. But as the client, or as I say, the coachee, is sharing what their challenges are, a lot of times it comes to them, and they're like, "Yeah, this just doesn't make sense. Yeah, we do need to work through this." So that's part of coaching as well.
Well, Jen, we appreciate the time that you've taken today, and uh, we would love to, of course, have you on in the future. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for being on, and we hope that our listeners have enjoyed this session.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.